Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We have arrived at the final session for today, which is on the Malaysian rubber glove sector. As highlighted by YB Tuan Willy Mongin, Deputy Minister of Plantation Industries and Commodities, Malaysia currently contributes up to 65% of the world's rubber glove supply, valuing Malaysian glove exports at 17.3 billion in 2019. This indicates that every 2 out of 3 gloves used globally today are actually made in Malaysia. While global rubber glove demand has risen by an average of 8 to 10% annually for the past 10 years, we have witnessed an unprecedented surge in global glove demand in 2020 due to the recent COVID-19 pandemic. This has led to the current global shortage of gloves, resulting in a rise in average selling prices, as well as increased orders from all over the world. We believe this has brought an enlarged limelight on Malaysia glove stocks recently, including those listed on Bursa Malaysia, which I believe we can call them as the darlings of both the institutional and retail investors today. Today, we are honored to have with us Dr. Supra, Vice President of Malaysia Rubber Glove Manufacturing Association, or better known as MARGMA. He is here to share with us on the outlook, opportunities, and challenges for the Malaysian glove sector. Just a little introduction on Dr. Supra. He has more than 29 years of experience in the Malaysian rubber glove sector, and is also the global pioneer of clean room gloves manufacturing industry. For the flow of the session today, Dr. Supra will kick off with a presentation on the Malaysian rubber glove sector, which will be then followed by a Q&A session. Over to you, Dr. Supra.
Thank you. Good morning. Can you all hear me? Good. The hottest topic, I suppose, would be gloves. In terms of the market rally, in terms of the kind of money people are making out there, some of it is quite insane, I must say. The current trend now, obviously, for foreigners to come to Malaysia and see they can set up glove plants in Malaysia. Unfortunately, the ecosystem is also Malaysians. The guys who can build the lines, the guys who can supply you the chemicals and raw materials and so forth, everything is Malaysian based. And they are also very stretched, trying to help the Malaysian manufacturers to expand themselves. So it is certainly a very exciting era for all of us. And who would expect that the Malaysian glove counters are being more spoken of rather than Tesla itself at this point in time. Latest news today, kind of thing. But really, it has been a fabulous ride for the industry. We have been growing all the while about anything from about 10% to 12% without fail for the past 15 to 18 years, continuously. Obviously, the pandemic has brought about much bigger growth. But having said all that, we are not without our challenges. And so rather than rest on our laurels and take a ride, we are taking a very proactive stand in terms of what can we do differently to keep on increasing the market share. Our ultimate aim would be, just as you move out of a house every day, you wear a pair of footwear, you also wish you'll wear a pair of handwear as you leave your home. And as you come in, you drop it into the waste bin and you get back into your house. So that would be the ultimate thing. And I'll take you on a quick presentation in terms of where the glove industry was, where is it now, and where is it heading towards to. Okay? Are you ready? So this is the MARGMA industry brief for 2020 on the rubber glove industry. I'll take you through 8 different topics. Introduction to MARGMA itself, which is the association, the big picture as to where we stand in terms of global representation, the Malaysian rubber glove manufacturing itself, which is purely based on entrepreneurship, captains of the industry, how they started small and how they are now running the biggest listed companies in this sector. Going on to the rubber glove categories. Now, we all think a glove is a glove with 5 fingers to it, but let me tell you, there are close to about 70 to 80 varieties of glove out there, and all of which is the forte of the Malaysian glove manufacturing boys. We talk about technological development, we'll talk about social compliance standards, future growth drivers and sustainability of expansion, and finally, current issues and challenges. So let me quickly take you through this because I'm sure there must be lots of questions because last week we did a similar virtual one, virtual kind of seminar, webinar, where we found that there were about 140 fund managers talking to us. And I roughly can figure out what kind of questions are going to come up again today. But let's keep that for the question time. Now, MARGMA itself is representing 57 manufacturers and about 170 other ecosystem guys who are also manufacturers themselves, but they support the industry in terms of liaison with the government, the services for the members, monitor and review various standards, and the think tank on current issues facing the industry. In all of these roles, we have a secretariat, which is paid for secretariat, and we also have a bunch of volunteers who are themselves manufacturers. I'm one of those volunteers. I'm also a manufacturer on my own kind of thing. And this would give a quick picture of, in terms of where we are in the membership, 57 manufacturers and about 170 ecosystem or suppliers to the manufacturers. When we first started, way back in the late 80s, the production lines were manufactured by Taiwan and brought to Malaysia. Today, nobody will ever build a glove manufacturing plant if the production line is not made by Malaysians. That's the kind of curve we've gone up in terms of the technological learning curve. And these are the 57 members, and you can see all of them are there. And they're all actual manufacturers employing staff and locals as well as foreigners. And the 170 associate members who supply to ensure that this manufacturing process goes on unhindered in terms of output and capacities. The big picture, where do we stand in terms of the global representation? The estimated global demand is 330 billion gloves, which means at every single second, you have about 10,500 gloves being used somewhere in the world. Which brings us to the next question as to what happens to these gloves. So the industry itself is working on it in terms of ensuring what has fallen onto the plastic industry does not fall onto us. So we are working on initiatives to ensure that we are sustainable from cradle to grave kind of scenario. So all the while that's ongoing. As I mentioned, the typical growth patterns has always been anything double-digit, 10 to 12%. But because of these unusual times, we are looking at 20% in terms of annual growth. And we project the export revenue would be 21.8 billion for this year, for the year 2020. And this has been revised as of June. And I think we would need to revise it a little bit further up in the months to come, for sure. And in terms of market share, we have about 67%. Obviously, our nearest neighbor, which is Thailand, is 18%, and China 10%, and Indonesia 3%. And then you have countries like Vietnam, you have countries like India, Sri Lanka, a little bit in Pakistan, so to say. These are where the manufacturers are. There are close to 150 glove manufacturers worldwide, of which 57 are in Malaysia. Yet, we monopolize 67% of the global supply simply because of our sheer size and also the fact that we were the pioneers when we started way back before, just around the AIDS, HIV scare, right? And we've gone on that path all the time. We have been doing enough work to keep ourselves up 8 to 9 years ahead on the learning curve. Every time, you know. So much so any buyer, any part of the world will come to Malaysia to buy from Malaysia first. And if he fails to secure any supply, only then he goes to the second source of supply, which is China or Thailand or other places kind of thing. So we are the preferred choice in that sense. Now, the Malaysian rubber gloves manufacturing, we have top 10 listed glove manufacturers, as well as privately owned. And some of them are very familiar names, especially those who invest in the market. They know that who are the hot counters at this point in time. And of the installed rubber glove capacity, we find that the publicly listed will accumulate 75% of the capacity, while those privately held will take up 25%. Number of ordinary members, 57 members. Total factories, 127 factories, meaning each company may have about 3 or 4 different factories, maybe by different names, but under the same mother company. Yeah. Installed production lines, about 2,086 production lines, and installed production capacity is 278 billion gloves per annum. Utilization runs at about 75% most of the time. Obviously now, because of the greater demand for glove, it may run close to about 85 to 90%, I think. If you look at the scenario in terms of the gloves itself, you'll find that it's taken up 4 different stages. The early stages where everybody was clamoring to get onto the bandwagon. We had a point in time where there were close to 600 licenses were issued for glove manufacturers themselves. Maybe 300 got taken up, and the rest of them just fizzled out, kind of thing. So that was the time the HIV/AIDS scare came in. That many number of people. Anyone who had money in their hands wanted to put up a production line to make gloves. But then they found that it was not as easy as that, because there were the regulatory, there were the standards, there was the certification, there was the quality involved in it. Hence, many containers that went got turned back because of lack of quality. So the meltdown came in the early years, which is the survival period. So from 300, it actually melted down to more reasonable numbers of slightly below 100. And then we went on to the production capacity, which is another growth area. And finally, it went on to the area of innovation and advancements, which is currently now. So this meltdown from 300 right down to about 57 players now goes to show that it is a game which they have been playing for not 5 or 6 years, for close to 30 years. So someone out there says, let's put up a line now, I've got the money. By the way, to set up a line now, you need about close to about 20 to 30 million USD to be able to be in the field, right? And someone says that, looks, let's get into the game now. It's not as simple as that. You need to have that level of experience in terms of managing it, and we have all the experience of 30 over years at this point in time. This talks about the comparison in terms of the 2 quarters, which is the first quarter of 2019 versus the first quarter of 2020. All the numbers are showing positive in terms of revenue. You find that it has gone up by about 16.3%. In terms of quantity, it has gone up by 14%, right? And again, the top 5 export markets for Malaysian rubber gloves is USA, Germany, Japan, China, and UK. And overall, you find on a quarter-to-quarter comparison, for the 2020 first quarter, we are at least 4 to 5 points ahead for a similar quarter in 2019. Again, the numbers are looking very positive. Now, rubber gloves category, this is just a 101 rubber gloves itself. Of all the rubber gloves that's made in this country and exported, 85% of them are medical gloves. And of all the medical gloves exported, 75% examination glove. This is the glove which you walk into a clinic, the doctor dons it, and then he touches you, he throws it down the bin. Yeah? Or you walk into the dental place, that's what happens. A distinction from that would be the surgical gloves, which is far more expensive, of a smaller quantity, but the doctor uses it to get into your body, touches your heart and veins and things like that. That's a surgical glove, but far smaller quantity. Then on the other side is the non-medical gloves. You have gloves for food processing. Now, every food processing company in the Western world, they ensure everybody wears the gloves, kind of thing. Industrial gloves, clean room gloves, tattoo gloves, which is completely puzzling because there's so much of tattooing going on in the world, and all tattoo gloves are generally black in color, for some reason. And it's a fabulous piece of business to do, really, end of the day. We do not know where the tattoo goes, but certainly the gloves get used up, and we're quite happy with that, really. See? And then you have household gloves, electrician gloves, and so many other gloves. Yeah. And if you look at in terms of material-wise, of the rubber gloves, 1/3 of it comes from natural rubber, which comes from the rubber trees in Malaysia. And the other 2/3 are synthetics, which is petroleum-based kind of synthetic materials. And in terms of the finishing and in terms of the variety, there's powdered, powder-free, and by way of length, there are multiple choices by way of multiple dipping, by way of blends, moisturizer coated, aloe vera coated, or antimicrobial coated. So the point I'm trying to make is there is a huge variety of gloves out there, and it's left to the individual ingenuity to devise and work on it, kind of thing. Every time we are all customer driven. And that has been the real success story. The captains of the industry have worked hard on this, conducting their own R&D, which many of them hold very close to their chests. Yet again, there is R&D organizations like Malaysian Rubber Board and the ministry itself, MOSTI itself, who also work with us, trying to address the issues of R&D kind of thing. This talks about the volatility of latex prices. There are only two things that happens when you fix a price for a glove. Obviously now there's of course third thing is demand, okay? But generally it is the price of your raw material, which is the latex that comes from the trees, or the synthetic that comes from the oil and gas, and the currency exchange. So these are the two parameters we always operate on. So if oil prices goes down, we know, okay, our raw materials are going to go down, kind of thing. Yeah. Yet again, in terms of the currency moves up, then we go to price accordingly, US currency, because all of us sell on the US currency. Whether it is to Europe or any part of the world, it's always US currency. So this just talk a little bit about the volatility, and then the average selling price. Just to give you a quick recap, during the HIV/AIDS days, we were selling at about as high as USD 120 USD per 1,000 pieces of gloves. And today, some of the spot buys are also like that, because of the demand and supply situation. Yeah. The technological development of the glove industry is essentially, we have all the while said that we need workers, and when we say we need some workers, they say you need to automate as much as possible, bring in the robotics, whatnots. And to give you an example how much automation we have done over the years, way back in the 2008 or 2009 time, we used to have 10 workers or 9.7 workers to produce 1 million gloves a month. And today, as I speak to you here, we need only 1.7 worker, which explains why the whole industry, for all its attention attracts, has got 70,000 workers, of which about 40,000 are foreigners, 30,000 are locals. That's all the workers we have. Imagine the foreign workers and this country running into millions, we only use 70,000. And of the 70,000, only 40,000 are foreign workers. So we have automated tremendously. If we had not automated today, instead of having 70,000 workers today, for the production we have, we would be using close to about 180,000 to 200,000 workers in the industry. So testimony of that is the fact that if we had done nothing or very little and just depended on foreign workers, we'd be using about 200,000 workers today for the production we have. But because we've done the right things, we are only using about 70,000 workers, 200,000 to 70,000. That's the kind of language we like to talk to our ministers when we talk to them, because automation, as it's always said, is a nice word to use. Automate, keep on automating, but there is a limit to it. There are some things that we can't automate. Of course we can automate, but it costs you an arm and a leg, and then the unit cost of the product goes up, right? So we need to balance that in terms of practicality. So this is one numbers we like to share with you, which is essentially from 10 workers needed to produce 1 million gloves, we are today using 1.7 worker only. Another example of what we have done in terms of process control and automation is way back in 1988, we were producing at about 3,000 gloves per hour. Today, for all the work we have done, which is again Malaysian ingenuity, Malaysian scientists, Malaysian R&D, we are now talking about 42 to 45,000 gloves per hour. That's the kind of journey we had, from 3,000 gloves per hour to 42 to 45,000 gloves per hour. And again, you can see a lot of work has gone into that kind of thing. Certainly, it is, again, a credit to the captains of the industry. Social compliance. This seems to be a topic at this point in time because I suppose success attracts a lot of attention to yourself. And certainly, it has attracted a lot of attention to our industry itself. And we are all the time bound by 3 different sets of audits. When a customer comes to Malaysia to buy some product from us, he does an audit himself, be it an American or European customer. Over and above that, when the customer sells that particular product to, let's say, Waltons or whatever, they will engage a third-party auditor to come in. That's a second level of audit, independent third-party audit. Then there's, of course, the audit by our Malaysian government authorities themselves. Are you following the labor laws, the living conditions, and so forth? So we have all the work subjected to that. Now, overriding that now is obviously there are NGOs out there who start saying that you should do this because you're successful and so forth kind of thing. We are managing it. And if you look at it, there are multiple social compliance standards. Many of our players have all these standards with them. But we made a conscious decision because of all this social compliance noise out there, made a conscious decision that all manufacturers should have as a basic point of entry the SIDEX-SMETA 4-pillar certified factory plan, which is basically a social compliance thing. And we are working on it. The government has given us a grant through the Malaysian Rubber Export Promotion Council. Many have achieved it. Some are in the journey. Some got delayed because of the COVID problem. So they got delayed by 3 months, I'm saying. So we are getting towards that. Certainly, and we are not resting and saying we're not going to do anything. We are getting towards that. I think, yeah. Time would be of essence for us, and we are trying to, our level best, to be somewhere by the middle of next year, for sure. And this again talks about the code of conduct we issued to all our members. We have got at least 4 different committees working very actively. 2 of them at MARGMA's level and 2 more at the government level, where we have this engagement and trying to ensure that all social compliance issues are managed successfully. Almost all of it has been managed. We also have gone on to say that we will have a 0 recruitment fee program in place. It costs us some money, yes, but we are willing to absorb that and move forward, so to say. What are the future growth drivers and sustainability of expansion? We find that there's a growing demand in many countries. So that would be very significant. As I said, our dream is obviously the fact that people start using gloves when they go to public places because of touching the surfaces and all kinds of things. You know? So certainly there is an awareness that has been created now, I think, because of the COVID situation. And of course, there's also the paranoia of fear in many people's minds. Okay, but both of these basically has increased the demand, so to say. There's also wider applications. Gloves are all the while in terms of medical examination as well as surgical gloves. Now there's a huge other wider application coming in. We would expect even things like the airline industry implementing gloves to be used by their steward and stewardess in time to come. Yeah. There's enhanced productivity, which is something we have been working on all the while. And there's also advanced automation. These are the factors that would create more output, resulting in more revenue for the country. And the drivers of growth in terms of a regional basis globally, you will find that in all the countries, all the continents, regulatory requirements has become of paramount importance, be it North America, Europe, Russia, Asia, Africa, South America, Oceania, kind of thing. The next thing that's happened is awareness. People have learned a lesson from the SARS to where we are in terms of the COVID. People learned a lesson and people have become more aware of it, kind of thing. They are becoming very precautionary. Other exceptional features would obviously be the aging population in Europe, so the geriatric homes and all that nursing homes will have a huge amount of gloves being used. Yeah. There's population growth in Russia as well as Asia. And of course, the situations pertaining to population growth, we have to remember this situation. The per capita consumption of gloves in America is 150 pieces of gloves per year, per capita. Europe is about 100 gloves per year. India and China, both put together on an average, would be only about 5 to 6 pieces of glove per year. So therein lies the huge mode of expansion. Just imagine if they improve from 5 to 6 gloves to say 16 gloves, that's already 10 billion gloves extra needed by the world, so to say. So the awareness is going to create more consumption, and hence there's going to be the demand cycle is going to be there, actively lurking around the corner, just above the supply situation. The epidemic and the pandemic is something that we don't want it to happen, but if it does happen, we like to be there to help mankind. That has been our stand, and we realize that the natural demand itself, over and above this epidemic situation, is sufficient for the industry to keep on growing. But if this epidemic happens, we want to be there at the front line. The ever-increasing application for rubber gloves, as I mentioned earlier, typically has always been medical, dental, moved on to pharmaceutical, laboratory, food industry, processing, service, electronics, clean room industry, industrial, janitorial, mechanical, tattooing procedures, household, and specialized medical applications. Our support from our suppliers or the ecosystem has been of paramount importance. So if you look at our success parameters, it would be firstly the government, who have always been working with us, ensuring that we produce enough to support the world in terms of export revenue. Then is the Malaysian-made ecosystem, right from the fine chemicals, advanced chemicals, to the hardware, to the software, not to mention the logistics, the banking sector, and so forth. All this has been very instrumental in terms of encouraging the growth of the Malaysian rubber sector. R&D is ongoing all the time. As I mentioned, some of it's internal, those guys, those players with deep pockets, having their own set of R&D going on. But yet again, there is R&D all the while going on by Malaysian Rubber Board, working with the industry and MARGMA. And it's always been to see how can we keep mankind safe. And one of the biggest areas we look at is hospital-acquired infection. You know, more people get sick by going to hospital than by not going to hospital. That's because they acquire all kinds of stuff in hospital, right? And that's where glove becomes the frontier to ensure such kind of things does not happen. So it's a huge area in terms of R&D, and I could go on for a couple of hours on that because that's also my forte. But nevertheless, rest assured that we are all the while continuously working on this in terms of the R&D. Current issues and challenges, we cannot get away from the fact that we don't have enough workers, be it local or be it foreigners. That would be why its manpower is in red color there rather than green. Of course, energy, in terms of the cost of energy, is always an issue. Latex supply, while we are big-time manufacturers of gloves, natural rubber gloves, the raw material comes from across the border, Thailand. Yeah. So, but yet again, do we have enough rubber trees in this country? Yes, we have more than enough. It's just that the form of latex is different. Instead of liquid latex, it is solid latex. They call it kaplam, which doesn't suit our purpose, but may be suitable for other dry rubber products kind of thing. But it's a shame, but we're talking to the government to encourage them and say, look, we need to move our smallholders, who principally are the majority of the rubber tree farmers, we need to move them towards latex rather than kaplam kind of thing. We're working on that with them. Water supply, we use lots of water, but then the R&D is also focused on how do we now reuse the water. A lot of work going on that, I think. So in terms of the current challenges in severity versus urgency, obviously shortage of foreign workers. And I would like to look at some specific numbers on that. Yeah, the industry employs 71,000 workers. We need additional manpower of another 25,000 workers. So that consists of 10,000 Malaysians and 15,000 foreigners. With the freeze in place, as mentioned by the earlier speaker, it certainly has thrown the spanners into the works in terms of how else can we support the demand out there and bring in more revenue to the country. But we need to manage. We need to manage. And managing is what we do best throughout all these years. We hope there will be some leeway given to us in terms of workers. Now, in terms of locals, again, why do locals not work in the glove industry? It is a myth and is a misnomer to say that it is dirty, dangerous, and difficult. No more. No more. Walk into some of the better glove factories today, you could eat off the floor. It is clean. What has happened is the biggest work consumed station would be the station on the stripping station. As sexy as it sounds, dipping, stripping, that's what the glove industry uses. But the stripping station uses any single line, maybe about 8 to 10 workers. But now with robotics arms coming into play, that's reduced to maybe 2 workers. That would be the most difficult zone, if you ask me. A lot of workers in the glove industry work in an air-conditioned environment of basically packing the gloves, which is still quite manual, so to say. So it is conducive. We certainly pay more than the minimum wage, at this point in time. How do we encourage the locals to come in? At the recent meeting, maybe about 2 months back, we met the minister and we told the minister, we will now draw up our own training programs for point of entry workers, the school leavers. We're going to structure our own program, use our own faculty, which is the retired people from the glove industry, and run this program so that when the worker comes in after 3 months of training, he has a sense of attachment. Because the issues of local workers is not so much getting them, I think we can get them, it's retention. Right? They will leave after some point in time for whatever reasons. So to have a sense of belonging, we need to bring them up the training curve, so to say, right? And pay them more than minimum wages. And that has been our stand, and we are working very closely with the minister, MPIC. Obviously, MOHR is talking to us also. So I think we are on good ground in terms of that. But foreign workers is something, a policy decision that has to happen. So we are, again, engaging the government on that, but with the freeze in place, we have to think differently how to manage it, so to say. Gas prices, has all the while been creeping up, and we expect it in 2021 to come down with lower natural gas prices globally. And obviously that's going to help us in terms of the unit price. One of the things we always want to manage is the fact that we want to keep the glove as affordable as possible for all and sundry. Glove has to become affordable for all and sundry. That has been our mantra throughout. We do not want to give you a Rolls Royce. We want to give you what is really possible for you to afford so that you can then take care of your personal health and hygiene. To sum up the whole thing, the 10th IRGC is the event which is essentially the glove event for the whole world, and Malaysia hosts that. It's happening on the 11th to 13th of August 2021. Please, all of you who are here, either physically or virtually listening to this, please make a beeline to that, attend it, and you can see how advanced we are in terms of the types of gloves on exhibition. It also brings in all visitors from all over the world. It's the biggest event, and MARGMA organizes that. So I invite all of you over there to see for yourself firsthand where we are in terms of this industry, which has been a growing industry for the past 15 to 18 years. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Okay, on that note, I think we should commence the Q&A session. So looking at a number of questions which are coming in, it's no doubt that glove stocks are very popular today. So I'm going to just try to summarize as much as I can in terms of questions to basically try to answer as much as I can, to ask as much as I can to Dr. Supra. So just to kick things off, recently, there's a lot of glove manufacturers in China which are expanding very aggressively. So among these questions I can see on the screen, there are almost 3 to 4 questions wanting to know about this China expansion and whether they will be a threat to the Malaysian glove makers.
Yeah. If you look at China, essentially, I think the news was 2 companies, Inco and Blue Sail, came up with some numbers and all the thing. I think 2 issues need to be managed. Number one, I think within that short span of time, it's not like building a hospital for COVID in 2 weeks, which was what China's story was all about, So it is 2 issues. One is, can they produce the kind of capacity within the short span of time? 2 is the ecosystem strong enough to support such kind of numbers? And I mean ecosystem is the raw materials, in terms of chemicals, in terms of fine chemical, formers, the machinery and so forth kind of stuff. And 3, let's say everything is in place. It'll be mopped up by Chinese domestic demand itself, entirely. Because as I said, China's per capita consumption is only about 3 to 4 pieces of gloves per year, per person. And if they were to increase it to say 10 or 15, easily whatever is being produced will be mopped up by China itself, kind of thing. Yet there will still be more demand from China in that sense. So Malaysia will still be a player. So your question would be, will there be a glut in gloves kind of thing, or is it a threat to us? No, it's not. It's not, because we have not even touched Africa yet. Africa's consumption of 1.2 billion people is only about 3 pieces of glove per annum. 3 pieces. And America is 150 pieces. Can you see the disparity here? So there is a lot of scope to basically move up in terms of consumption patterns. So we do not see that as a threat kind of thing in that sense. Yeah.
To follow up on that, do you think that China's technology in the rubber glove manufacturing segment can actually catch up with Malaysia one day? Let's not say in 1 to 2 years' time, but let's say in 5 to 10 years?
Let's put it this way. China has always been very good in terms of copying as well as moving up. I mean, that has been their forte for the longest time, and you must admire them for that. It's not negatively said, it's very positively said in that sense. And so, on that basis, as we stand today, you realize that this game of certification, quality, regulatory and all that is a game that is based on the language English. And we are very, very fortunate, extremely fortunate. Malaysia had so many English-speaking personnel in terms of quality and so forth. So to be able to play this game of quality, certification, regulatory, we Malaysians are all the time ahead. Also the R&D in Malaysia has always been easily, as I mentioned, 5 to 8 years up the learning curve. And if China has caught up, they would have caught up easily 10 years back, because they were already on catching up on everything. But until today, as I mentioned, the preferred point of purchase, first preferred point of purchase is always Malaysia. And for some reason, Malaysians can't keep up with that particular demand, then the market moves out to other countries. So we are the preferred simply because of the fact that it has already been ingrained in many people. Made in Malaysia means quality, good glove, good experiences.
Okay, Dr. Supra. I get this question a lot as a glove analyst, so I think I'm going to direct it back to you. So what do you think of the current selling prices of gloves, in view of the COVID-19 pandemic? And let's say in a post-COVID-19 world, which is going to be at this moment quite far away, what do you think are sustainable prices going to be at?
Well, I can only say one thing, The fact is there's a pre-COVID, there is a COVID, and there's a post-COVID. Now, of course, now during this COVID situation, prices are astronomical simply because of supply and demand, number one. Number two is obviously raw material shortages out there, kind of thing. And then obviously we are coupling that with lack of workers and so forth. We need to manage all those things. So, what is the scenario on the post-COVID? We do not know when is the post-COVID scenario going to be. But I can tell you one thing, that the price of the post-COVID will definitely be much higher than that of the pre-COVID. Will it be as high as the COVID times? It may not be, okay? It may come down, but it certainly be higher than the pre-COVID days. So don't ever think, don't ever dream that it'll go back to the old days, good old days of the pre-COVID prices. It will not be, because while the COVID pandemic is over, and don't forget, we have all the while been focusing to try to supply the COVID situation, health workers. All the non-health sectors has been basically stagnated. We could not supply them, or they were not even functioning because of the COVID, right? The pharmaceuticals, the laboratories, the food, everybody was very slow. Now that when things are back to normal, this particular segment will start brimming and asking for supplies. So that supply is going to come in to its whole situation, number one. The awareness of the people themselves that we need to be health conscious, we need to be aware of our own personal hygiene, has also tremendously increased. So there's going to be another increase up there. So these two increases up there would take care of more than the decrease as a result of the COVID per se. So it will definitely keep on growing. Prices will be high, but higher than the pre-COVID days.
Dr. Supra, before the pre-COVID times, people are quoting that global glove demand is growing by 8 to 10%, and you quoted 10 to 12%. Do you think post-COVID-19, do you expect, global glove demand to grow beyond just a single-digit number?
Yes.
To go beyond that? And do you think it'll be mainly driven by the medical sector or just beyond that?
I think it's going to be twofold, So let's look at some specific numbers. Pre-COVID, let me take one number, which is 12% growth, okay, average number. COVID is 20%, and post-COVID would be something like about 17%. This is the kind of numbers we are looking at, okay? Is it something that we can stand by in terms of cast on stone? No, it's a prediction. It's a prediction by looking at the demand situations kind of thing. So that numbers will always be there in terms of the growth numbers. But anything to 17%, I would think so. Yeah.
Dr. Supra, in your slides you mentioned that you're looking at 20% growth to potentially reach global glove demand to reach 320 billion, and you highlighted that MARGMA is likely to raise that number further. Any insights of how much you think you can at least achieve given this point in time?
I would not say any numbers now for fear that again the numbers on the stock market might move up and all that. But we are looking at how do we gauge this? I mean, as manufacturers, we look at the number of inquiries that comes in every day, and they look at the quantities that they're asking for, and the kind of ASPs they are willing to pay. Yeah. This tree is an indication. Has that been abated now? Has that slowed down now? No, it has not. It has not. As I sit and speak here, if I look at my emails, me being a manufacturer myself, the numbers has always been there. It is still there staring at us. It's a question of we just can't supply because our capacity has all been taken up. Our lead time used to be about 2 months. I mean, say from the time you place an order, within 2 months, we would give it to you. 45 days to 2 months. Today, there are manufacturers out there who take until 6 months, yet others right up to 10 to 12 months before they can fulfill the order. But buyers are willing to pay now to book that capacity, which is a good deal, good thing, I think. But still, I'm just trying to make a point that the demand out there is still very vibrant at this point in time. Yeah. Okay.
Dr. Supra, do you mind giving the audience, whether virtually or physically here, pre-COVID, glove selling prices were average of 20 plus. So at this moment in time, what is the average selling prices for gloves? And do you think you'll go even further beyond this point?
Go up further or go down further?
Go up. Let's say go up in the next 3-6 months.
Prices have to be looked at in two perspectives. One perspective is, are you into contractual pricing with your long-term customer? Or are you on a spot buy, spot sell kind of situation, right? So these two has to be separated out very clearly, kind of thing. So on the contractual situation, yes, prices have still gone up because, as I mentioned, for reasons of supply demand, for reasons of raw materials, for reasons of workers, shortage workers kind of thing. So prices have gone up contractually. But spot buys is anybody out there who needs to buy it very quickly, kind of thing. So spot buy prices are way above. Yeah. So if you look at spot buys, can be as high as 120 USD on an apple-to-apple basis. Yeah. Contractual may be in the region of mid-60s. What was post-COVID? Pre-COVID was maybe about 40. So 40, 60, 120 during this current period, and that prices will then adjust itself naturally a little bit lower in terms of the post-COVID scenarios. These are just numbers, and I'm just going by that. Can I say that everybody sells that? No, it all depends on who is able to supply and who needs it that much urgently. And so the price mechanism kicks in. So these are the kind of averages you have here. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Supra, let's...
Looks like you like me very much today.
Yeah.
I can see that,
Dr. Supra, let's head ahead a little bit into a bit of murkier waters, where a bit of tough questions are coming from the audience. Okay, I can see here a lot of people are very interested on potential windfall tax. People are talking about, would the glove sector be imposed with, windfall tax given the supernormal profits which are expected from glove companies due to the COVID-19. Do you think this is a likely scenario, or do you think it will be a good move, or do you think it will be a negative move?
Well, think about it this way, already as we are successful, of course now we will have bumper numbers now, but do not forget, of that bigger number, 25% goes to the government, right? So whatever profits we have would then be reinvested back. Do you know the glove industry is on the average invest back close to about anything from 600 to 1 billion ringgit every year, because it's an organic expansion. They keep on going. Forget about whether there's COVID or no COVID. It's an organic expansion. They continue to expand because of the fact that the global demand increases by about 10 to 12%. There's no COVID at all. Yeah. So I suppose the whatever profits we have after paying our taxes would then be also plowed back in terms of expansion, so to say. So if your question is a windfall tax fair or not, I think it's left to the devices of the powers that be to say that, because they would have to realize that, look, on a bigger quantum, 25% of a bigger quantum is a lot more money for the government, right? And if anything else comes beyond that, then it curbs our own expansion program.
Understand.
And the final result will be, when you don't expand, then others expand and take up market share. We do not want that. Yeah? Thank you.
Hey, Dr. Supra, I know you're talking about expanding further because of the profits. You guys are going to plow back into the business. I'm just wondering, what is the main attraction for glove manufacturers to continue to expand in Malaysia and not move to another country, like, for example, Thailand, which are providing tax incentives? Can you just share with the audience today, why is Malaysia such an attractive location, in terms of logistics and everything, that keeps manufacturers wanting to expand in Malaysia and not move somewhere else?
Yeah. One of the things is obviously the fact that buy Malaysia first by all global buyers. Now, it would be ridiculous for a Malaysian company to be in Thailand and say, we are a Malaysian company, but we're made in Thailand, and still try to push. So that buy Malaysia first is extremely important, right? So, because the word made in Malaysia is synonymous with quality and certifications and assurance that you're getting a good pair of gloves. That's one. But more importantly, it would obviously be the ecosystem. Nowhere else in any of the other countries you mentioned about is the ecosystem as developed as us. And are other countries a cheaper source of manufacture? I don't think so. China is no more as cheap as what it was all the while, Yeah? Okay, you can go to Cambodia, but what ecosystem does Cambodia has, right? So we got to be very wary of the ecosystem, because you can have a cheaper source of labor country, but then when you don't have all the ecosystem, then you got to still bring it in from all over the world, your price still goes up. So this whole situation has ensured that Malaysians remain in Malaysia. And obviously I must not bypass the situation that Malaysians are very patriotic. Yeah, I mean, I must say this. Because otherwise we would have been all over the world by now, All of us have always been here. The policies of the government has been fair to us. The government engages us and talks to us, which is good. And the association itself, I think in a month at least, talks to about 5 or 6 ministries in every month on various things. We are always in the engagement mode, so to say. Yeah.
All right. Okay, shall we head a bit into the upcoming budget 2021? Just now we talked about windfall tax, but shall we just ask, from a MARGMA perspective, what's on your wish list that you think that the government can do to accelerate expansion of glove manufacturers in Malaysia, or to expand acceleration of growth, be it through hiring more locals or being through growing the industry further? So what's on your wish list?
I think one important thing is, while we will try to manage with the government in terms of local workers for the situation, in terms of the foreign workers, I understand there is a quest by the government to reduce the number of foreign workers. I mean, it is an agenda of the government, and we can appreciate that, yeah. But the way to do it would be in a long-term plan. Give us, say, a period of, say, 5 years, and then over the 5 years or 6 years, tell us that you should reduce it this particular way in stages, and ask us for our program as how do we want to manage this. Work with us. Rather than to have a knee-jerk kind of approach towards any problem, have a long-term staggered plan where we can all work together with the government of the day to ensure that we reduce dependency on foreign workers. But for now, we have to now ask ourselves, do we fulfill the agenda of not bringing foreign workers, or do we fulfill the agenda of bringing more revenue in terms of export earnings? It's a balancing act, So if I talk to people at MIDA, they will say bring in more revenue, for example. If I talk to people at MOHR, they might say, hey, reduce your foreign workers. So this is a situation, but we need to strike a balance. And this is our wish to the government. Do not throw any surprising spanners into the works. Surprising, I say, because sometimes it just comes overnight and says, can't do this kind of thing. Engage us and give us enough time to work through whatever situations we need to manage. And we only ask you to give us, for example, reinvestment allowance, for example. We're not asking for any grants from you. Yeah? We're not asking for any cash handouts from you, but just allow us to expand by way of reinvestment, tax allowance, and so forth.
All right.
Yeah? Okay? Great.
Yeah. So shall we ask the hottest question in town today? People,
this is the last question?
Yeah, I think this is going to be the last few.
Because I'm also getting heated up here.
Oh, don't worry, I'll keep you rooted to the seat. Recently we've heard news about one of the largest listed company, glove manufacturer, being hit by a detention order by CBP from the US. What is MARGMA's comment, and how is MARGMA acting to basically resolve these kind of issues being faced by manufacturers?
Yeah. Now, you see, CBP looks at generally on social compliance, and we have also engaged with them. We had a huge, what we call a virtual webinar with them, recently, to understand the reasons and so forth. And I think there are two major issues here. One is obviously the zero recruitment fee, which all of us have adopted, meaning, say, if we take a worker in, and if you know the worker has paid so much money, then we are willing to pay that amortized over maybe the 24 months kind of thing. Yeah? That's done. Now, the other question is, of course, remediation. Meaning to say, the workers that they come here now, he's already working happily, but he tells you, hey, I spent 20,000 ringgit, before I came here. And this is what the activists are telling us. That 20,000, even though we are no part of it, it could be scammers, conmen, whatever out there, who took those guys for a ride in their village and in their city, so to say. But now, we are held responsible for that. So, the challenge for the industry is now talking to every worker to find out what was the amount of implication on him. And again, it is not evidence-based because it's still hearsay at this point in time. Anyone can say any number they want. So, we have been going through that. There are some members already remediated. Others are in the process of remediating. Yet again, others are studying as to what would be a good model to use. So if you ask me in terms of what does the association think, association say, yes, we need to remediate. Okay. However, it is left to the willing employer and a willing employee to come to understanding that this is the numbers. Assessing the numbers is a long, cumbersome journey, which we are now going through. And we would certainly, obviously, work with some international consultants on that to ensure that we come to an amicable solution. But are we shying away from it? No, we are not. We are not. We are, in fact, taking the bull by its horn, so to say. Yeah.
So talking about this point, do you think that Malaysia, or even especially the rubber glove sector, will continue to be a preferred destination for foreign workers to come to work for? Do you think this would deter foreign workers from working for the Malaysian rubber glove industry?
You know, I need to just qualify that very quickly in terms of remediation. Yes, maybe perhaps the glove industry can do it, you know, but we also need to look at what is the impact on a national situation. What if now this whole thing gets talked about by the activists in terms of all other sectors in the country? The net impact would be a huge repatriation of Malaysian funds overseas if they keep on harping on this. Today is the glove industry. Tomorrow it could be somebody else. And it goes in circle. And that's how NGOs work, activists work, kind of thing, right? So it's going to be a never-ending game. So we need to be firm about it and have a full, wholesome solution to that situation, you know. So yes, certainly your question in terms of will Malaysia still be a destination for foreign workers? It should be. It would be, at least to work in the glove industry. It would be because of the fact that we take care of them well. Yeah, we are being socially compliant. We are spending a lot of money being socially compliant. And why can we do that? Because we are a very small industry in terms of number of workers. In terms of revenue, we may be much, much bigger. But the number of workers we talk about end of the day is only 40,000 foreign workers for an industry that generates close to 21 billion revenue compared to the number of millions of workers, foreign workers in this country in so many other sectors. So it's very minute. Yeah. So rest assured, we're doing all the right things, be it from the association perspective or through the Malaysian Rubber Export Promotion Council, to whom we actually pay a cess, you know. So they're all working together with us to ensure that we are on the right track.
Okay, to end things on a high note, shall we go back to a positive question? You know, this is coming from the audience. You know, what's your outlook in the next 3 to 6 months on the rubber glove sector? Do you think things are going to get better and better from this point onwards, which is already very good for everyone? Do you think things will even get better? Or, you know, as we are in the investment community, do you think glove stocks are still worth investing in at this point in time?
I wish I had a crystal ball, you know, to look at and, you know, make a judgment on that. But I'm going to tell you one thing, you know, is it a growing sector in terms of demand? Yes, it is, okay? Is it going to grow as high as how this pandemic situation? Maybe not, maybe lower than that. But I will think, as I mentioned my numbers earlier, you know, these are the kind of numbers. It is going to be definitely better than pre-COVID days. COVID is a very unusual occurrence, just like SARS was a very unusual occurrence. Yeah. Just like HIV/AIDS was a very unusual occurrence. Just like H1N1 was a very unusual occurrences. We cannot run our lives based on unusual occurrences. We must run it on the norms of supply and demand. And the norms of supply and demand dictates that it is going to be definitely higher than, post-COVID is definitely going to be higher than pre-COVID. Okay, to this note, thank you so much, Dr. Supra, for your session today. Thank you for audience for joining us for this session. We will look forward to further sessions with you, Dr. Supra. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.